Hi, this is going to be a video response to a question made by one of my viewers, Ron White's Gamgee. He was asking about if I ever had players that didn't know how to roleplay. That is, they thought that they were playing role-playing games, but they didn't roleplay properly. If you haven't seen my video where I talk about the confusion between roleplay and acting, please check it out. The link will be in the description. So Ron Wise was asking if I had managed to help them understand how to actually play a role-playing game, and if it was possible to teach others how to roleplay, others that have been trying to get into the hobby. I say that because, as many of you know, there are people that have been playing perhaps 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but they haven't been playing a role-playing game. They've been having a mother may I conversation. So how can you teach them how to roleplay without getting them upset? Okay, first I want to present some context when it comes to my origins in tabletop RPGs. I've actually been thinking about creating a video where I talk about my first role-playing game session, to call it like that. I think it's a bit of an overestimation of what that session was actually about. But yes, I think it's a funny story. I have talked about it briefly in another video, but I think one of these days I am going to give you a better picture of that story. Okay, I started out as a crap role player, like many people in the hobby. I think there are only a few fortunate people that were introduced to role-playing games in the proper way. For example, the members of Dave Arneson's group, when they played Blackmoor, I think they were actually role players, at least based on what you would read in books or watching in documentaries. They were actual role players, but they also played the game. They combined the game with the roleplay aspect. So yes, my attempts at playing role-playing games were quite poor in the first 2 years, more or less. That is, you could say that I spent playing 2 years in a somewhat of a mockery way or form when compared to how you should actually play a role-playing game. And it was only after I mentioned that I went to Texas and I saw this dungeon master running Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in an amazing way in a hobby shop. I was just like taken aback, amazed. So that was like my initiation. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to experience. So the first group that I played role-playing games with, well, it basically dissolved later on, and only one of those players remained. And I think this is the key moment to address the question, because we were both crap role players. It was easy for us to enact the transformation, apply the necessary changes to actually play in the correct way, because we were both going through that transition. We were like, oh, we have been playing wrong this whole time. So we started to apply it together. It was a one-on-one session. And after we both understood that, then we could introduce others to the hobby. But I would say that's my only experience when it comes to teaching those that have been playing wrong. Because after that, the other groups that I've had up to this day, they didn't know how to play role-playing games, and I initiated them into this hobby. So you could say that I taught them or showed them the ropes, the ways, in the correct manner. But I think it is possible to teach others that have been playing what I would say the wrong way. But you need to reach that place where they are. Emotions are sometimes places. They are dimensions, you could say. So unless you go to that place where they are, emotionally speaking, then you have less of a chance or not an optimal chance of teaching them how to roleplay. You need to put yourself into their place and tell them, well, you have been asking questions, but that is not necessary. You can point them to my video of the roleplay and acting confusion. Tell them you interact with the game world, you talk to the non-player characters, you do whatever you want as if you would do in real life. In real life, you are not asking some invisible force if you can carry out this action, or if you can go into this place, or if you want to know about the characteristics of some object or person. You are not asking some invisible entity about that. You are observing the person, the object. You are interacting with devices, with vehicles, with anything. And that's what role-playing games are all about. They are not board games. They are not video games. There's nothing like the role-playing game hobby. It is so immersive. So one way would be to, like I said, try to get to their emotional state. Like, oh, well, you don't need to do that. And gameplay is going to be so clumsy. You don't need to ask questions. And once you reach them in that place, then you can pull them back to the side of RPG righteousness or correctness. So I think many dungeon masters and game masters are familiar with this sort of dynamic. Like, for example, maybe you are running a game and for whatever reason somebody said some joke and they all start laughing. Unless you laugh with them and you become very serious, then you cannot pull them from that state of, like, they get this monkey mind. You know how they refer to it in Zen philosophy? The monkey mind that is constantly jumping around and fooling around. Unless you become the monkey, like, that's so funny. Okay, moving on. You kind of have to pull them away from that. And of course, the transition is going to be a bit more smooth. Not like, that's so funny. Okay, no, more like, okay. So, as I was saying, trying to pull them from that state. But in general, if someone gets upset about you teaching them something the right way, I wouldn't play with that person, because that person is very immature. You don't want to play with kidults, or how would you call them? Like a man-child. You want to play with mature people. Even if they are younger than you, they need maturity. If someone is pointing out something that is wrong in whatever it is, in a trade, in a profession, in an activity, in this case, in a hobby, in role-playing games, a rational person, a mature person, observes the criticism and you appraise if it applies. If it doesn't apply, you can say no, that's not correct, or whatever, or for this reason, or for this argument. But if it applies to you, then you need to stop letting your ego control you, because many people get upset when you tell them that they haven't been playing the correct way. Because, as I said in my video where I talked about the confusion between role-playing and acting, unless the person experiences actual roleplay for himself or herself, there is no other way to teach them the pleasures of playing a role-playing game. So, round-wise, I don't know if it's like a question about general advice, or if you have some players that have been playing a Mother May I conversation. A good idea is to try to reach their state, to see why they are playing it like that. You can tell them, oh, I've been playing in that way, in that incorrect way. Let's try it this other way, because the immersion will be better. It's going to be more fun. The experience is going to be more intense. So that way you're kind of like pulling them from that state into this, what I would say, a better or optimal state. But if they start to get upset, then you need to kick those players. Unless you have... You shouldn't be wasting time with people that get upset when you are providing these useful tips. that comes out like very needy, like you want to play with someone even if that person is a horrible player. It's much better to be a whole person, like have a certain internal balance where you are fine on your own or with players that actually want to play a role-playing game. And that way, that's how you obtain respect, I would say, not only in role-playing games, but in other areas, because you become this man or a woman, in the case of a woman, that stands on his or her own. You don't need anyone else. And if they want to enjoy an RPG session with you, that's fine. If not, you will find people that are actually willing to play the correct way and experience that true immersion and that perfect marriage between roleplay and gaming. So those are my thoughts on that. It was definitely a difficult question. As I mentioned, you can see that I was struggling a bit coming up with those thoughts because, like I said, I've only converted or deconverted or deprogrammed rather that person from the Mother May I conversation style, because I was actually in that style when I first started to play role-playing games. What do you do? and my players were constantly, can I use this? Can I do that? It took me because, like I said, well, maybe not many of you know this, but I started to play learning from the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition box set. That's where I started to get into role-playing games, but like I said, it was not very well explained. Now in retrospective, I can see that there were many things lacking in that box set when it comes to the technical aspects of playing a role-playing game. So I was also in that error, in that zone of errors. So it was easier for me to work with this other player, and we both escaped that zone together. But I still hope that these tips provide some insight. Take from these ideas what is useful and what is not. If nothing was useful in this video, I'm sorry, because like I said, it's not easy. At the very least, I think there is value when it comes to players. What I said about players getting upset, those players sound very immature. You shouldn't get upset when someone is making some corrections. Just imagine, for example, in my case, I can just imagine if in martial arts you were doing this where you were punching or kicking or striking or blocking or grappling, and somebody came and told you, hey, you are doing this wrong because you need to apply pressure here. So you verify it for yourself. So that's another good point. Maybe you can tell your players, just try it in this way and see how you feel truly immersed. You're going to feel as if you are actually there. Can you handle the intensity, the excitement? Well, yes, I think that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for your question, Runwise, and thank you to everyone for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.